But what she really did was change the way people in England, and then it spread to the rest of the world, thought about economics. Coming out of World War II, Britain had been devastated. Prime Minister Clement Attlee basically began a welfare state. The government would help create jobs, would create housing, public housing. The labor unions were given enormous power, and it got to the point where this was unsustainable. Britain had to go to the IMF for a loan in the 1970s, and she came...
Hard to fathom, right? The IMF was created for countries devastated in World War II, smaller countries, not necessarily, and African countries, not necessarily the UK.
And she came to power and basically said, we're not going to focus on a nanny state anymore. We're going to change it to personal responsibility, personal achievement. Now, a lot of what she did is controversial. A lot of the ways she did it controversial. It was very hard on the British people, particularly the poor people. And there's still today a divide between northern and southern England, where she broke the miners' strike in the north, and a lot of those communities never really recovered. But the English economy, the UK economy overall, has performed better.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Walk us through the results. I mean, with some of the policies that she put in place, did that translate into more prosperity?
It did. Now, they had to go through very tough times. You can see in the unemployment rate, it skyrocketed after she came into office. She had to fight inflation. We had the same problem here. She was doing what Paul Volcker was doing over here. At the time, the government controlled the Bank of England, and interest rates there went to as high as 22%. And you can imagine the effect on business. But she broke the back of inflation. She also broke the power of the labor unions. Companies started hiring again, and it reversed the trend. Now, when she left office, they were back in recession, as were we in the 1990s. But overall, the legacy has been strong because what happened was the living standard of the average Briton rose and has been rising ever since.
And of course, that was, and there she is, seen with Ronald Reagan, her counterpart. The two of them were so tight. Yes, it was all about deregulation and giving power back to individuals and businesses rather than the government, isn't it, Mike?
They did disagree about a number of things. She thought that Ronald Reagan was too quick to cut taxes and wasn't strong enough on spending cuts, which is a criticism a lot of people have made in the past. Interestingly enough, Thatcher raised taxes in 1981 at the height of their economic crisis because she felt she couldn't cut the budget deficit by cutting spending anymore. She'd taken too much out of the British people, but she had to cut the deficit because of this loan to the IMF. So it's a complicated legacy, but it's one that's going to go down in history.